Welcome back to This Week in Indies. You know, one of the cool parts about being an artist is finding a way in whatever you create to not just connect, but to make those who you are trying to connect to hear, see, and feel what you might want them to. It's that subtle art of creating those optics that not only challenges the artists, but shows their prowess and rewards them with the ultimate gift, the super fan. The one fan that will get others to enjoy the optics of what you create as well. We'll discuss that and more with our roundtable discussion panel. Then, C.O. Cannon will be along to bring you indie books if you're a fan of Into the Glades by Laura Sebastian. Then finally, Joe Compton will address you all in his annual State of the Indies address. What's he going to talk about? Well, gee, Stephen, you're just going to have to wait to find out. Luckily for you, though, you won't be waiting long. So sit back, relax, grab a cup of coffee, and enjoy this week's show with your host, Joe Compton. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Welcome to the show. Thank you for joining us. We really appreciate it. It's so nice to have you all here. We do have an awesome show and an awesome discussion ahead. But I wanted to start today's show. Earlier this week, I was introduced to something that's happening over at our friends at Falstaff Books. They're putting together an anthology for a personal influence of mine in Edgar Allan Poe. And so I wanted to help them out and get the word out because they're so close to reaching their goal, everybody. They have a Kickstarter going right now. And so if you could go over there, check it out. And if there's something they've got a lot of great editing sessions. They've got a lot of really great things that they're offering as perks for contributing to the Kickstarter. And, you know, for $10, you can get a lot of stuff. So your money will go far, and you'll be helping me enjoy something that I think is going to be awesome. And I have a nice little intro package to show you, and then I'll talk a little bit more about it on the other side. But we'll get to the round table. Here now is a look at Nevermore, the Falstaff Books anthology coming out soon, hopefully sooner rather than later.
Falstaff Books is excited to present Nevermore, an anthology of short stories based on the masterpieces of the one and only Edgar Allan Poe. Are you ready for a spine-tingling descent into the depths of darkness? Nevermore includes 18 original stories written by talented contemporary authors who have been inspired by Poe's eerie Gothic style. From the interstellar terror of James Tuck's The Valley of Unrest and the mechanical shivers of Day al-Muhammad's The Clock Struck 13, to the dark revenge of Misty Massey's The Cask of Amarillo, the monstrous mystery of Kat Richardson's The Purloining Peacock, and so much more. Each story captures the essence of Poe's work while offering a unique twist on his themes of horror, suspense, and the macabre. Let our amazing authors take you on a twisted journey, exploring Poe's haunting themes in unique ways. Experience the thrill of Poe's tales like never before. Choose your pledge level today and let the thrills begin.
So everybody check out Nevermore, and the link is in the description below us there, and go contribute and help them reach their goal. We really appreciate them letting us do that for them, and also for putting out such an interesting anthology. I'm looking forward to it. That being said, I am also looking forward to the incredible conversation we're about to have with this incredible group of people. Look at this. Look at this dais. Oh my gosh. It's pretty awesome. I am starstruck and awed by all of you. So without with you know, let me stop yapping and have you all introduce yourselves because I'm just gonna trip over myself more and more. All right. So Madeline, why don't you start us off, please?
Hey guys, you know me. I cannot get away from this week in Indies. I mean, it's good to be on the panel instead of hosting every now and then. But for those who have not seen our show before, I'm Madeline Dale. I'm a multi-genre author. You can check out all of my work on my website here, thechaptergoddess.com. I host Character Driven here and Talking Indie Mayhem. And obviously, I'm on a couple of This Week in Indies shows on Sundays. Joe can't get rid of me. I'm stuck. Like, I'm not going anywhere. But yeah, you guys check out my stuff. Check out my podcast and my blog as well. I'm looking forward to this conversation. So,
And that is not how we see it here. We're not stuck with anybody. We're happy to have you. Absolutely. We're also happy to have this man who Monday night will be talking to the winner of the Green Room, and he is the host of the Green Room, Mr. David Green.
Thanks for mentioning that. As obviously I did
Yeah, because I know you weren't going to mention it. So.
Yeah, I was did a live video for half an hour, about an hour before last week's Green Room. I just forgot to mention it altogether. So yeah, I am David Green. I write epic fantasy and urban fantasy, and I am just happy to be here. And also, I host the Green Room.
All right, I'm just gonna keep going. All right, Adam.
Hi, my name's Adam Gaffin. I'm another frequent guest here on This Week in Indies, and I am a near future hope punk science fiction author. My latest book, The Heart of Space, came out on Tuesday, and it's available on my website. It's available on Amazon, and I'm also participating in a Kickstarter for a different anthology, which is a fundraiser for Club Q, the shootings that happened last November. And all of that is in my link tree, which is right here.
Awesome. And I also have the link to that in Adam was a guest on our Spotlight and Multiverse show on Friday. Go check that out and check out our interview. And I also have the link to the Kickstarter in there as well. If you can't, I mean, I don't know how you can't find the link tree, but that being said, I wanted to mention Adam's using a new feature that StreamYard has given us, and I really like the way he's using it. And his free books is his first book. Everybody, I mean, if you're not into the Cassidy Chronicles because you don't want to spend $3.99, I don't know why you wouldn't want to, or however much it is now. I don't know how much you price them, Adam. Probably $2.99. But the first book is free, so if you can't get into it after that, I don't know. You're not crazy. But I thought that was a cool way to use that little gift that StreamYard gave us. So I think you might be starting a trend, sir.
Thank you.
Pretty cool.
All right, Claudia.
Hi, I'm Claudia Blood. I write science fantasy mostly, but science fiction and fantasy because I can't decide what I like to write. And I have my link tree below as well, right there. And the first book is free in the Relic trilogy, which is complete. So in case you guys are interested in checking me out.
I don't know who wouldn't be. That's awesome. Although I contend that with the name Claudia Blood, you should be writing horror.
I know. And then I had kids and it just went south. So.
But it's actually kind of cool that you're not, because that would be a little cliche.
On the nose.
Yeah. All right, Nicole.
I'm Nicole Gibbons-Carrots. I am a cyber noir writer. I write fantasy mysteries, cyberpunk, cyber noir, as well as horror. And I'm also the owner of Mocha Memoirs Press.
Nice. All right. So the optics of what we do and how we do them, it's not a magic trick, right? It's not. There is methods and there is I don't want to say science behind it, but there is, ways to create emotion, invoke emotion. I'm more interested, though, not in the emotional aspect of what we create, but the sensory aspects of what we create. Because oftentimes, I think a lot of things, the nuances of senses get lost in some writing, especially if there's heavy exposition or there, something like what David writes in epic fantasy. You know, part of what makes I'm going to say it, David. I'm going to say it. Part of what makes Tolkien so engaging and inviting is that he's able to give you sensory moments, right? The moments like, you know, uh, the first time that somebody touches the ring and what they feel and how they feel it and those kind of things. Amongst all of the unbelievable exposition and garbage that he puts in his books, there is that. So, uh, yeah, David and I, for anybody who doesn't know, have a running arguments about Tolkien, but that's fine. We won't get into that today. But I wanted to kind of start with what senses do you focus on? What are the things you focus on to create the sensory moments in your writing? How do you, what do you lead on? Is there a tactic? Is there a thought behind it? Is there something that you use that you feel like helps you get to those moments? What is it? How do you approach the sensory moments to get a reader involved in what you're trying to portray?
I have a character that I'm writing right now who has, of course, tragic backstory, right? She has her house explode and she becomes hard of hearing, but it's the smell of the smoke that was there and surrounding her and the flashing of the lights as the emergency
Cool.
crew is there. And later on that comes in. And so every time she's got her anxiety kind of going through, those things come back and they kind of push her away from what she's feeling in the scene itself and move her back towards that memory. So I was trying to use it as that way to just to show that she's not grounded in the here and now, but letting her anxiety, take control and push her away.
Is it kind of like a foreshadowing thing, or are you using it like as like a moment that happens, like a flash?
It's a little bit of foreshadowing, but it's also she's actually trying to integrate herself into the net, the web, like the first time that she's doing it, like putting her body inside of the net. And so when she doesn't connect correctly, it's like her brain short circuits and starts bringing back these sensory perceptions that, match her back to her past. So it's like the cycle then that gets her anxiety up and, makes things start going more horror than what she's actually participating in.
Holy cow.
I know,
That's
right?
like, makes me think of like a PTSD kind of like thing.
I
Yeah.
offended David so much he left.
I'm going to piggyback off what you said, Claudia, because like triggering with those kind of stuff, I like to include almost like my own personal experience with things and putting it into my characters so I know how it feels, like how it felt to break a bone, or like feeling it snap in my hand and kind of like almost blacking out, or just like in some of the steamier scenes, or just like personal things that I've felt with those emotions and how it came across in something similar to what's going on in the story. So
Yeah, I have no problem with the sensory aspects of certain scenes in your book, Manny.
so I pursed my lips earlier. I was like, oh man.
Adam, Nicole, you guys want to jump in?
One of the things I've been playing with in something I'm working on is some synesthesia. So people are, they're hearing colors, and they're tasting what something feels like. Just because things are a little bit off in this particular little pocket dimension. And that makes it gives a sense of unreality to what's going on, because most people don't, you see what you see, you hear what you hear, you don't hear what you see. So there are going to be some people out there who are going, I know this, and it's going to feel real familiar to them. And there are going to be others who get that sense of, all right, this is definitely off center. Yeah, for the sense with my characters, generally it's it's what they see and what they hear. To a lesser degree, it's going to be what they smell. That I use to describe the scene, because a lot of it is being, it's through their eyes and through their ears and through their senses. So pulling it in, pulling the reader in that way is my go-to.
So I work to have, because I write cyberpunk and I write cyberpunk noir. It's interesting that I need a level of verisimilitude. It's always at the forefront for readers, especially because the world is new, it's different. You don't want to do things that knock them out of that. So I work to make sure that it's familiar enough that it doesn't knock them out of the story. And so in order to do that, you have to engage all the senses. And so in many cases, if you have a rounded character, then you need to make sure that when you're walking into scenes that whatever they smell, whatever they see, plus my characters tend to be detectives. So they're observant of all of those senses. What does it feel like in this room? Is it stuffy? Is it abnormally cold? These things are clues. And so in my work, particularly in Kingdom of Ava stuff with Prentice, her ability to see the unseen makes it so that she has this ability to see things that have happened already. But in order to do that, in order to not be so weird for the reader, I work with, okay, what is she feeling? What is she smelling? What is she interacting with in terms of her senses? It's very important to that storyline. To that character. So sometimes I do what Madeline said and put myself in those situations. Okay, if I was walking into the situation, what are the things I would see? What are the things I would hear? Right? And so what senses would be engaged the most? Those are the types of things that I do as well. And I know that emotion plays a big role in all of my characters, because I like works that are emotionally invoking, even though they're fantastic, right, or science fiction-y. What usually grounds all and connects all human beings is the emotions that we all have. And so that's really important towards that verisimilitude and connecting with the reader.
Hey, David's back, everybody. And
Yay!
Anita wanted to mention that, and Nicole does it very well in Kingdom of Eve. So, by the way, Anita's here, and Andy's here, and Madeline's here, breaking the fourth wall and the fifth wall today. Did you hear my joke, David, when you got kicked off?
I don't know if it came before or after the thunderstorm.
I said I offended you so much you left.
Oh no, I didn't.
Do you want to jump in though?
Sure. Yeah. You actually, because I read on the internet right here that you love Tolkien, and you brought down the wrath of Tolkien when you said that, and he unleashed the absolute biblical storm that's going outside. So talking about senses, it's quite quite good timing. So yeah, like senses are really a great way of when you're writing stuff, and this can go from like the most kind of like real world set to the most fantastical thing. One thing that kind of grounds everything and that everyone can relate to, other than like emotions, is senses, because most people have at least 4 of them, or most people have 5, some people have 4, whatever, 3 or whatever that's going on, but people usually would have experience with most of them. So it's a great way of, especially if you're writing something that's super, super fantastical, of just really kind of grounding a situation and grounding a new place that you've created, so if you've got somewhere that's set by the sea, it's going to have that kind of, anyone who's been to a city by the sea or a port, it has that smell of salt in the air, like, constantly. It has the cry of seagulls or some other kind of birds that kind of like live around the shoreline. It will have like, certain characteristics no matter where that will be, because that is just the way that like life works. So it's a good way of kind of tapping into that. And it might be a place that's filled with magic, and it might be a place that's filled with fantastical creatures, but there's some sort of truths there that will be inescapable. And it's a great way then of just giving that kind of thing to the reader and going, okay, you know what this is, how this should feel and how this would feel and how it would hit sound and how it would smell. But here's this little bit of extra stuff as well, which is basically mostly what all writing is like. You're kind of giving people, you're trying to get the reader as accessible as possible at the beginning before you start to introduce all this extra stuff. So I'm writing about senses for me comes quite easily, actually, because people who've seen the show or know anything about me before, I'm autistic, so like sensory overload is something that I've had to kind of like live with for all my life, and being very, very aware of smells and sounds and stuff like that. So it's something that kind of comes it's something that's always at the forefront of my mind anyway when I'm kind of thinking about a scene. It's like, well, what can people see, what can people hear, what can people smell? So yeah, it's something that's I'm always kind of thinking about in general.
And Anita wants to mention, yeah, there's a definite smell to the sea. I agree. I mean, yeah, anytime I meditate, I kind of like use the ocean because I know that smell so well, and it helps me kind of get out of my headspace a little bit. But this is why I like doing this show, because I always have smart people on here, and you all alluded to my next question, so you kind of led already into the next question I was going to ask. David mentioned that there are certain things that we all associate with, and I just mentioned how I associate with the ocean, right? And that we should know what they smell like or what they feel like, right? And Nicole mentioned that she uses these as clues for her mysteries and crimes and things of that nature. And Claudia mentioned in the most unique and awesome way to use sensories and put it in there. And I'm kind of curious. So that can be also misleading in a lot of ways, because can you use senses to kind of be a red herring? Can you use them to be something that you want the reader to really experience, but you're really trying to get them off the scent of what you're really trying to tell them? Is that something that you guys do? Is it, how do you use senses in that manner?
I think I'm going to jump on this first, since I write a lot about shifters. Okay. So, I mean, obviously shifters transforming into an animal of some sort is not a legit thing. But in the way I write it, it puts the person's mindset as if they're going through that transition too. It's not pain-free or anything. Your bones and your body has to completely reconstruct. So anybody that's had a broken bone or anything harm their body knows that pain. And I can take and utilize that to create this fictional image in their head with sensations and everything of the main character or whoever is in the story becoming an animal. So hopefully that kind of fits. So
it's a good way of like playing with senses, and particularly the absence of senses is a good way to kind of signify to a reader that there's something not quite right. So in a way that, like, obviously, and this is probably like a real kind of it's more than just epic fantasy. It's anything that's kind of any kind of scene that's set in a forest, I think. And you can probably think of 100 examples of like where it's a little too quiet, because generally if you've been anyone who's spent any time in a forest, there's usually the sound of wind going through leaves, there's the odd crunch where there's like an animal kind of walking around, and there's normally like there's something going on in a forest. Like generally there's a smell as well as of bark and of other things, pollen, and what have you. So like if you're, and that's just the normal way of a forest. So if you're writing a forest scene, and it's like there is no sound and there is no smell, and there's nothing like that. It's a good way of saying, there's something not quite right here. And then using, again, C as an example, like as you say, everyone associates a certain thing with a C. If you describe that in a slightly different way, like if you say there's like a bitterness to the scent of the salt or something like that, it kind of signifies again that there's something wrong, because there should be like a freshness to the smell of the sea. So it's a good way to kind of like subtly do that, and readers pick up on it well because they know they've lived in the world for so long. They know exactly what these things should sound and smell and act like. It's a really good way of kind of just tweaking that and playing with it.
Okay, so that story that I'm writing, the main bad guy is actually catfishing the main protagonist. It's kind of a terrible beginning for her, but she'll come back later. But I didn't realize it until you asked that question, that he's actually using scent to try and make her more compliant. So he's associating all of these things that he does with the scent of his aftershave. And I didn't realize this until you actually had asked this, but so he tries to calm her down, because he ends up trying to like blow up the building and try to kill her. But because, as one does in these sort of stories, but he purposely laces his scent in the apartment to try and keep her calm and to keep her, like almost like trying to trick her into thinking that everything is okay when it absolutely is not okay. And she should run for her life, and ultimately did. But so a way to use scent and sensory to trick the main character.
So I have bodies. I have lots of bodies in my work, usually dead ones. And so in many instances, certain smells around the body, right? The coroner or the coroner can figure out what is going on if there are certain smells around the body. And so that could also be misleading. And so smells in particular are very important to my detectives, as well as what things look like. So if things don't look right, but they live in cities, they live in like the district, or they live in the Kingdom of Avis, and those cities are noisy, but they have a rhythm, and they have a scent, they have a flavor. In many instances, cities are, in my work, cities are characters too. And if those characters don't behave the way the protagonists are used to their city behaving, so they know something's off, right? They can tell something's amiss. Sometimes it's a good fodder for red herrings. But in many instances, it helps move the plot along in terms of finding out who the antagonist is, right? In resolving the mystery. So definitely.
I love doing those kind of little things like that. It's that just yeah. There's so many things that have been done before. It's very hard to create something new with that. So it's kind of cool when you get that opportunity. How about for you, Adam?
So I was thinking about the red herrings, and again, since I'm trying to get people to see the world and hear the world through the character, their interpretations of what they see and what they smell can definitely be a red herring if they get it wrong. But they're absolutely confident that, okay, this is what I heard, this is what I saw, this is what I smelled, and they go down that path, and oh wait, no, you're absolutely 100% wrong, and it's actually this other thing. And one thing I did in one of my stories is some of it takes place in dreams, and dreams are very fluid, I think would be a good way to put it. So as the character is dreaming, she knows that things are not the way they ought to be. They're not making sense, but she can't figure out why they're not making sense because she's so immersed in that unreality. She can't pull herself out of it.
There's a good moment in Tales of in your Into the Black series where Kendra figures something out as they're walking in New Orleans that I think it was very sensory, and I caught on to it really quickly, and I thought, oh, there's going to be some trouble brewing here. but yeah, Andy says part of the editing process for the five senses. Part of my editing process for the five senses. While I'm unable to think of any specific time when I was using senses to say something else, I found that the senses help the story leap off the page. Yeah, absolutely. I was just going to mention it in my first book. I use a moment. There's a moment when somebody figures something out and a bomb's about to go off. Madeline probably remembers this moment, and the detective who's in the room gets a little whiff of something, and that's what causes it to happen. So it's those kind of things that you can also not only, I think senses are important not only to evoke emotion but to move the story forward, right? Because you can use senses to do that, and I think that's an important aspect of it as well. I'm curious if there was a sense that you really wanted to capture in a moment that in your writing, and you were having a hard time doing it and it just didn't work, and how did you pivot from that? Anybody have that experience?
Yeah, I write quite a lot of battle scenes. And I do, yeah. And what I tried to do is I tried to avoid the kind of more like classic epic fantasy of like having this big overview of it, where it's like, there's people charging, and then you can't quite remove from it. So what I always wanted to do was kind of like really anchor it to a POV, and obviously with that series, the Empire of Ruin ones, they're the third person POV. It's a lot easier to do that if you do it in first person, obviously, because you're behind that character's eyes, and it should be an assault on the senses sort of, and that's one of the things that one of the what some people criticize first person present tense is that it's too sensory, because it's like everything is happening at the same. And I kind of get that as well, but I do write in that for the Nick Coleman books. But for these ones, yeah, I wanted to kind of avoid that kind of like, I wanted that immediacy. So, and when the first kind of pass at a battle scene that I did kind of fall into that kind of trope of like trying to do too much, where it's kind of do this like kind of sweeping kind of view of everything that was going on. And then it kind of got, and I was trying to like think of like, trying to get all this kind of like the smell, the heat of battle, particularly like, because like, whenever you kind of like study any kind of like battles, especially of those types where it's like, close quarters, there's people kind of talk about the heat, like it could be fighting in Antarctica, but it'll be hot because of the body heat and the blood and everything else, the desperation. And it was like, well, it's not really working from like such a sweeping kind of way. So that's where I kind of get to that bit where it's like anchor it to one person's POV, and then it kind of frees you then, because it's like, even if that person is like kind of like a higher ranking person in this like, army or whatever, they're not going to know everything that's going on in the battlefield. So you can kind of forget about that and go, okay, well, let's just focus on the immediacy right here. So I did like one battle scene at the end of the first book, and then the second book, which is Path of War, I opened it with a battle scene, and I kind of went with that direction where it was like
pretty brutal one on top of that.
And it's just that kind of thing where it's like, just that, and I tried to really kind of hone in on that kind of sense of when I was in a big crowd. Like, I went to go and watch football matches quite a lot in the UK, and there's like, the team I support, the stadium holds 80,000 people. It's a lot of people, and they're all crowding outside trying to get into the stadium, right? And it's like kind of thinking it that way. It's like a blur of faces, there's this wall of sound, there's all this kind of stuff, and there's no way of knowing like, what is going on 10 feet away from you, let alone 100 feet on the other side of a battlefield. So it's that kind of thing of just like trying not to do too much so that you can do a lot in the immediacy.
I can't imagine the way the tube smells after a football match either.
Ugh.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Piggyback on David with the fight scenes and stuff, because that's another thing he does really good, is the internal like chatter. Like you're constantly talking with yourself, like, oh, I can do this, like you're pumping yourself up kind of thing. Or like in his case with I'm still working through his book because my schedule's not allowed me to read a lot. the person is battling with this entity that's inside them, and there's that constant chatter on top of their own thoughts. Like, it's just, you don't want to overwhelm the person, but if there's enough there that, you know, they're struggling with the situation, or they're trying to fight being overwhelmed or something like that. And then just including how their body reacts if it's in like third person, which I struggle a little more with because I do a lot of first person point of view stuff. But including how their body reacts, the adrenaline makes their heart pump faster, sweat build up, that kind of stuff. It just, yeah.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that I did that didn't work, and I didn't realize it, was when you've got more than one character in the same POV. So you've got different POVs in the same scene, so they're experiencing the same sensory, and they have the same sort of notice to them, right? Not everybody notices the smell, not everybody notices the sight, not everybody notices, you know, insert whatever here with shining and flashing, and then it doesn't also mean the same things to them. They each have to have their own reaction to what they're doing. And so sometimes the first draft you read through and I was like, oh, I have robots in here and they all see and smell the same things and they all, you know, have the same responses to it. Great. Okay, moving on. Next draft.
No, I agree. When I was writing and my Glitches and Stitches, the Death Violation series, the protagonist has PTSD from her job, right? She's a detective. And so her being a homicide detective has actually given her PTSD. And so she is, and Joe knows that she's in the last week of her job. She's done. But when I was writing Fawn initially, the struggle was how to make that, the crippling anxiety that she feels and the flashbacks that she feels, how to make that impactful without making it a trope, right? Or because I have PTSD, and so I did what I think it was David said, that when he put himself in a position of thinking back to when he's at a crowd at a football game, I did the same thing with Fawn. I was like, okay, when I have an episode, what does that feel like? What is that? What are some of the sensory things that invoke that? And then try to put those emotions and feelings and sensory details in Fawn when she's out in the field and she's having a PTSD episode due to working. But it did not go well the first time I wrote it. It was very trite. And I was like, and it felt forced. And so in the revision, Claudia, I was like, this all seems very robotic and typical what people think a PTSD episode is. And so I went back and said, I need to sit with my own reactions, right? And make it more authentic. And that is the work that I did in revisions, which is why revisions are so great.
Is part of our cleverness part of, I'm gonna just say it, we're clever, and we're talented. Each person here is uber talented, but it's part of the process and part of being a writer and learning how to be a writer, knowing when to pull back the reins on senses as well. Is not saying something sometimes a little bit more effective than actually saying something. Do you all agree with that?
I think I mentioned this earlier, where we were talking about the absence, and I think David mentioned this as well. The absence of some sensory details can be just as impactful, like the silence in the forest, right? I mean, horror genres have used that. The horror genre has used that like forever. But it also is when you go into a house and it's suddenly cold and it's 90 degrees outside and it's a house with no AC, right? Indicative of there may be ghosts, right? So it's the absence of things sometimes, and sometimes that's the only thing that you're focusing on is how cold this area is and how quiet it is, right? And so I definitely think the horror genre in particular plays a lot with emotions and sensory details. But yeah, the absence of a thing or leaving out a thing can definitely be really impactful in the writing, and knowing when to only write this one emotion, this one sensory detail is just as important as when to include them all.
Yeah, it comes down to pacing. Pacing is really important, and it needs to get to the point where it's like, do I need to keep unless so say when you open a scene and you're like, okay, set the scene. This is what the characters can see, hear, sound, smell, all that kind of stuff. It's like, is there a reason to mention it again? Is it intrinsic to what's going on? And it's like, you don't have to keep mentioning it unless something has changed or unless you want to try and draw attention to it. So if it isn't like a key element of the rest of the scene, as long as it's been kind of there and the reader knows that like it's daytime, it's nighttime, you don't have to keep on going like the stars are still shining in the sky, because it's like, well, that's unless
you're expecting the spaceship to block it,
Yeah, unless something has changed, right? And then that's the reason to draw the attention back. And so it comes down to that, where it's like, and that is part of the editing process and redrafting and everything like that. And it's just to kind of get that balance of what does the reader need to know, and is the story moving quickly enough, which is like one of the things which is like really, really important. And it's something that kind of thought it trips a lot of people up, I think, especially in first chapters of books when they're trying to set up a lot of stuff. It's like, let's just go ahead to it. Let's just get in this and enough set up. Let's go with the story, and I think there is that kind of thing where you can fall down, especially in first person stuff. It's because it is like, whatever the reader, whatever the character is seeing, whatever they're thinking, whatever this, there needs to be a point where it's like, okay, we get it. Move on, right? So yeah, there is.
Can you tell me where Tolkien reached that point, please?
I think there was.
No.
He just likes to talk about. He likes to talk about trees quite a lot,
Yeah.
But they don't read our stories just for the senses, right? They don't care what the person smells. They need to do something and have something happen to them and have, the story.
Yeah, you can probably get really stuck on
only when it's really important, right, to the story that you need to include it. But a lot of new writers sometimes spend a great, and I think David was hinting at this as well, a lot of time telling you every detail about that setting, right? Make sure you're fully immersed in the story, like in the setting, but you're like, can we just get to the person when they discover the dead body? I'm sorry, I'm a mystery writer. So.
Yeah.
Where's the corpse, right?
Yeah. Well, that's the thing, like, if you were going to be like so like immersive, like, because say you're stood outside and it's a hot day, there's going to be like a bit of a breeze every so often. So it's like, you're not going to stop and describe like every single time like a breeze goes past, because unless it's important. And I would do that in my books, because there is like, magic is really intrinsic to like the health of the world. Basically, it's like a and as it's getting, there's people that are corrupting it. As they kind of draw close, the world kind of reacts to it. So there is some bits where it is like, I would be kind of like, there'll be characters doing something, and they'll be like, it'll mention it's like it's a clear day or it's a clear night or whatever, and then I might just like, to say like a character's noticed that like there's clouds rolling in, or there's like rain has started or something like that, which is like kind of out of place. Well, then they've not like kind of put two and two together yet, but then the reader is like, oh, something's about to happen, and it kind of, and because again, something is changing, but it's not like every single time there's like the wind changes direction. It's like, look, I need to tell the reader this.
Yeah, for sure. I don't know if Adam is able
something.
to talk, or...
I'm not going to turn on the video since my computer's with me right now. But something else that can be very effective is if you have been describing all of these sensory experiences as you're going along, and you gradually to the atmosphere.
We're getting like half of what you're saying, Adam.
Sorry for.
Yeah.
I was saying that if you've been describing a lot of sensory stuff and you gradually reduce it and you take bits away, then it's going to set up in your reader a very unsettling feeling as all of this information that they had been getting stops, and they're going to be wondering why. It's not so much a sci-fi thing, but it could certainly be something applicable to a mystery, or a thriller.
Right.
Absolutely.
Or horror.
Yeah. Noir uses that a lot, actually.
We do.
Yeah. All right. So something that we utilize a lot here at Go Indie Now is the Indie Connection. And that's because we have the awesome CL Cannon who provides us each and every week with an Indie Connection. And this week, speaking of forests, if you can see the forest through the trees, you can see a bunch of indie books. If you're a fan of Into the Glades by Laura Sebastian. And here's CL Cannon to tell you all about them.
Hey guys, CL Cannon here from Fiction Atlas Press, bringing you another Indie Connection. Today I'd like to tell you about some indie books that you might enjoy if you're a fan of Into the Glades by Laura Sebastian. The first book I have for you is called The Girl from Earth's End by Tara Dairman. 12-year-old Hannah loves living with her two papas and cultivating her beloved plants on the tiny island of Earth's End, until Papa Nile grows seriously ill. Now Hannah is determined to find a legendary, long-extinct plant with miraculous healing powers, even though the search means journeying all the way to St. Basil's Conservatory, a botanical boarding school rumored to house seeds of every plant ever grown. At St. Basil's, Hannah is surrounded not only by incredible plants, but also, for the first time, other kids, including her new roommates, wisecracking gender-fluid P, who gleefully bends every rule they come up against, and wealthy, distant Laura, who is tired of servants doing everything for her, from folding her clothes to pushing her wheelchair. But Hannah's search for the fabled healing seed means she doesn't have time for friends, or so she thinks. The second book I have for you is called Pailu of the Woods by Maya K. Nguyen. Willow loves the woods near her house. They're calm and quiet, so different from her own turbulent emotions, which she keeps locked away. When her emotions get the better of her one day, she decides to run away into the woods. There she meets Pailu, a lost tree spirit who can't find her way back home, which turns out to be the magnolia grove Willow's mom used to take her to. Willow offers to help Pailu, and the two quickly become friends. But the journey is long, and Pailu isn't sure she's ready to return home yet, which infuriates Willow, who's determined to make up for her own mistakes by getting Pailu back safely. As the storm rages and Willow's emotions bubble to the surface, they suddenly take on a physical form, putting both girls in danger, and forcing Willow to confront her inner feelings once and for all. The third book I have for you is called The Music the Stars Sang by T.L. Cervantes. In a world filled with music, star lore, and shadow monsters, 11-year-old daydreamer girl must master the musical language of the stars before all dreams are turned to nightmares. Will she risk her own memories to protect the dreams of others? When daydreamer Addie is placed in foster care after being separated from her dying gran, even the music she sees written in the sky and her new smarty pants friend Roop can't keep her grief away. Nightmares peel off her bedroom walls and materialize, and shadows pursue her. Once Addie and Roop are chased into the magical kingdom of dream miners, where miners unearth dreams in the form of gems, Addie welcomes the escape. She feels at home, like she stepped into one of Gran's stories. But shadows taint the jeweled gardens blanketing the forest kingdom. Left unchecked, they are growing into a darkness that will turn dreams into nightmares for children everywhere, unless Addie taps into her unpolished musical talent to stop it. And the last book I have for you is called Life and Death by Selenia Paz. When Natalia's younger brother disappears while on a visit to Mexico, Natalia is certain that La Llorona, the mythical weeping woman, has taken him. Her friend McGill agrees to accompany her back to Mexico in hopes that it will help him deal with the recent death of his grandfather. But as they embark on a journey to search for the creature that has taken Natalia's brother, it becomes apparent that the spirits Miguel had brushed aside as mere legend are very real, and they have a dark connection to his family. Okay, that's all for me this week. I'll see you next week on the Indie Connection. Bye!
And as always, we're very grateful to see O'Cannon for doing that for us each and every week here on This Week in Indies. And those are some wonderful books, everybody. Go check them out. The links are in the description. And some of those were just that last cover. Wow, striking. But that being said, I don't know how she does it. She just finds the most beautiful books to highlight. But that being said, we'll look forward to next week's Indie Connection. And, I'm sorry to make your TBR list go bigger and bigger. And hopefully it gets even bigger with all the folks here that we have. So if you're not reading any of these folks, shame on you, because they're awesome. Even David.
What's that? Sorry, I was yawning. I yawned and like the yawn filled my ears. I couldn't hear anything else.
Sorry. I'm glad you didn't hear that. I love you, David.
I've grown fond of you, Joe.
I wanted to kind of round out the conversation. I purposely stayed away from the emotional aspect of things because I think a lot of us lean on emotion a lot, often more times than we don't. But I'm wondering how the incorporation of emotion works with senses. I mean, we've kind of touched on it already. We have certain senses that are near and dear to us that we relate to, and that kind of aspect of it. But is there a way to kind of blend the two, the senses that will create the emotions? I mean, I'm sure Madeline has an idea of how to do this, as somebody who writes very steamy sex scenes. But that being said, is there? Do you find that that's the nuance? Is to try and blend the two? Do you kind of want to keep them separate? How do you approach bringing in the emotion with the sensory aspects of things?
Go on, Maddie.
Okay, well, I mean, for those steamy scenes, I feel like it kind of comes hand in hand, really, because sometimes one thing is going to cause this, so, I mean, I'm trying not to go into too much detail on steamy scenes, but, I feel like it's harder to separate them rather than putting them together in those cases, so...
Can I just say that Maddie started off talking about steamy scenes by saying that they go hand in hand with, and it's like,
How about for you, David? I mean, there's a lot of emotion that gets invoked on a battlefield.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, I think emotion can heighten senses, right? It can make you kind of emotions can make everything kind of feel more vivid. It can make things louder. It can make all this kind of stuff, but it can also deaden senses as well. And especially when it kind of goes into as a PTSD kind of moments and stuff like that, it can kind of make you really kind of focus on certain things. Or it can overwhelm you as well. And I have being autistic, I have an autistic character as well in the books. And one of the things about which is like a kind of I suppose a misconception about autistic people is that we don't feel emotions very well. We do. We feel a lot of emotions, and but we have trouble kind of articulating emotions sometimes, or expressing emotion appropriately. As what would neurotypical people would, and what we would often do is that we can just kind of shut down when we get overwhelmed, and that kind of goes hand in hand with sensory overload. So there is that kind of thing where it's like, look, I need to just block out this sense altogether so I can actually make sense of this other thing that is happening, because my emotions are actually too much to handle at the moment. And that is a really kind of thing that I obviously use it with my autistic character in the books, but it's also a thing that I use with people that again, like talk about the battle scene that I was talking from Path of War with Nexus. Like he has had like a very traumatic experience. Well, his life has been quite traumatic, and he's kind of channeling that in a not a very healthy kind of way. But as in that scene, like, you know, his emotions are getting more, like he talks about how he's bottling up his emotions, like until he gets into the battle, then he kind of unleashes them. But what really happens is that as his emotions are heightened and heightened and heightened, his sensory, the senses that his experiences are becoming more and more narrow, to the point where like he is pretty much living in the past. He's living in this prior experience. And the actual present, with everything that's going on and all the sights and sounds, have kind of just bled away because his emotion has taken over and he's taken him into this place where he lives in this trauma. So it's an interesting thing to kind of work with, and kind of, you know, it can go in a lot of different directions. You can really use the emotion to kind of really, you know, manipulate the scene and to really kind of mold a different kind of reaction for each different person.
Cool. Claudia, you guys want to jump in?
Well, I have a scene in Kill Three Birds, which is the first book in the Kingdom of Ava series. One of Prentice's abilities is to see the unseen. So she's a hawk. And so she can shift to hawk vision, which lets her see prior magic or supernatural residue of events. So what happens is, over time, the more she uses this ability, the more difficult it is for her to shift back into her human eyesight. And so what happens in Kill Three Birds is she uses this ability to the point beyond for an extremely long amount of time. And when she tries to shift back to her human eyesight, she can't temporarily. So she's blind. And she's in a foreign place because she, in the Kingdom of Ava's hawks are dispatched to different eggs, which are cities, to investigate supernatural crime. So she's in an egg or a city that she's unfamiliar with. And she's at the home of a potential suspect, and she's blind. Suddenly she's blind. And so she doesn't have access to her abilities, one, because she's tapped them out, and two, what her normal eyesight. And so this period in the story, there's a lot of panic on her part. And so in order that it's emotional for her because it's unfamiliar. And so there's this balance of trying to write the scene where you depict the panic that she's going through, but also, and the fear that she has, but also tempering with the fact that she knows she has to not be overcome by panic because she's got to get out of here. She's got to find her way back to where she's trying to go next. And so it's a very tense scene, but it does involve a great deal of just these two emotions, panic and fear, trying to temper that with, and a lot of, I think, was it Madeline who mentioned earlier about the internal self-talk, the internal chatter. So there's a lot of that, trying to coach herself to remain calm while the body is having those high adrenaline, right? Rapid heartbeat, sweaty palms, trying to, because she's afraid, because she can't see and she's alone and nothing that she's used to doing is working. And so I think the senses, or the absence of one of them, coupled with kind of, if you think about it in a flow chart, the absence of the things she's familiar with in terms of sensory input, leads to some emotional, right, panic and fear. And then that leads to some conflict internally in that self-talk. I hope that made sense.
Oh, yeah,
Absolutely.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I've got a very similar situation where the hard of hearing character that I talked about earlier, and it's the lack of sound she feels very vulnerable and isolated from the world. And so it brings up those emotions. And unfortunately, the poor girl gets attacked a couple of times. And so it heightens that whole, like, that paranoia. So she's trying to, like, look around and take in more things because she can't hear people coming, and she can't hear the conversations because the background noise is making it, hard. She has to try and watch people and lip read. And it adds to her overall emotional state and makes her susceptible to what my bad guy is trying to do to her. So, yeah.
Everybody's having connectivity problems today. It's just crazy. David dropped out again, and Adam is here, and he wrote this to share with everybody. So I wanted to share with everybody that emotion is tied into sensory process. So intricately. All it takes is a single smell to trigger a memory and emotions associated with it. You can use this to give a piece of a backstory in a seamless and natural way. And
David says his power is gone. So,
okay. So we probably won't see Mr. Green again. Everybody can go. I do have his links in the chat or in the description, so everybody can go and check it out. And definitely go check out the Empire Ruin series. It's phenomenal. It's just amazing. And so I want to thank everybody here for what was a wonderful chat. And let's go around the room and tell everybody where they can actually go and get everything that you guys are putting out there. We're going to go the opposite direction this time. So Nicole, start us off. Tell everybody where they can find you.
You can find my work at NicoleGibbonsKurtz.net or at MochaMemoirsPress.com.
Everybody go check out Mocha Memoirs. They've got some really awesome stuff out there. So everybody go do that, please. All right, Claudia, you want to tell everybody where they can find you?
ClaudiaBlood.com. That's where you can find me. And I'm wide mostly, so.
Nice. I mean, if you were convinced to buy Claudia's books in this conversation, I don't know what conversation you were watching, because pretty awesome stuff. Adam, are you able to tell us where they can find you? Obviously, you can see the link.
So I'll give it a try. Go to my link tree. That's where you.
Yeah, it didn't work very well, but but you can see the link tree right there. Everybody, look at that. I'll put it right up in the big of the screen so everybody can see that. Definitely go get the Casting Chronicles, because that's
it's stabilized.
No worries, but get the Casting Chronicles. It's free. The first book is free if you're not reading awesome hope punk LGBTQ fiction.
Yes, go to my link tree. You can get free books. You can find my website, all that good stuff.
Nice. And support the Kickstarter that he's a part of and the anthology as well. I'll grab that link from the multiverse show that I did and bring it over here as well, so you all can contribute to that. Madeline?
Well, guys, you can find my stuff at my website. Everything to find me on social media and everything is there. I am wide. New books coming out soon. My next release is Hooked. It is with the editor right now. I'm excited to get out there. It's my first adventure into writing more of the high fantasy kind of stuff. So be sure to check it out. I'll have pre-orders available soon. So yeah.
Awesome. And I'm Joe Compton, and you're watching Go Indie Now. Thank you for joining us. Is this your first time here? We really appreciate it. Smash the like button, subscribe, do all those wonderful things. And I will have news about me personally and Joe Compton's stuff very, very soon, as I look to re-release some books and put some stuff out there. And also I'll be telling you about an exciting movie adventure I'm going to be going on pretty soon. So everybody stay tuned for that. That'll happen probably toward the fall end of things. But I wanted to bring this comment up by PJ Lightning and saying, typical, I just found you as you're winding up. Well, good for you. The good news for you, PJ, is that we're here virtually almost every single Sunday at noon Eastern. It's the one thing that we've kept pretty consistent throughout Go Indie Now's programming. So although we are wrapping up the season, so you also caught us at the end of the season, but we do have shows all over the place at Go Indie Now, so you all can check out Go Indie Now. And I just did an interview that I posted from the Puerto Rico Comic Con, which I didn't know was his first English interview, which really touched me. He's such a wonderful guy, Raymond Volmont, and definitely check that out because it's a really cool story, and it's a really neat thing to see how artists, really gravitate toward what they're doing and how they're doing it. And I love that passion, and Raymond is full of it, and it's a really, really great conversation. So please do go check that out. It's up now on our site. That being said, I'm not turning it over to anybody. You got me for another 5 minutes. Y'all get ready because here it comes. The annual State of the Indies address by me. And I always do this toward the end of the season. I've done it for the last 3 years. So get ready because I'm calling you out. All right. I'm putting you on blast right now. All right. Look, our world is changing. Our media is changing. Our narrative is changing, and how we do and approach business is changing. We started this season of This Week in Indies talking about AI and the impact that it was coming toward and what was happening. And at that point, we were very much in its infancy in terms of what it was capable of and what was going on. I have been to a lot of events and seen a lot of things and talked about the aspect of AI with a lot of people and how it's growing and how it's becoming this. This is the new thing, everybody. This is the thing that is going to pave the way for the future. And you can either stand on your high ground and fight it, or you can take it and incorporate it in the manner in which that we should intend to attach and incorporate things to. This is something that I'm very familiar with, as I was in both the music industry and the film industry when things were starting to change. I was in the music industry right before streaming became the norm. And there was talk about streaming and how it was going to ruin the business, and how, this was right before, yes, I'm this old. It was right before Napster started to get involved in torrents and bringing music to the forefront for free. And so, and that was the fear and the talk, and everybody just kind of gave into the fear of it, right? And then I was a part of the digital age of filmmaking, when filmmakers flat out refused to do digital because it wasn't the same as film. It didn't have the same aesthetic. It didn't have the same feeling. It didn't have the same idea of you being a filmmaker. You were more of a videographer if you were doing digital. Now everybody uses digital. Don't be fooled. Anybody who says, "Oh, I only shoot in film," no, you use digital to edit because it's so much easier to edit. So even if you're shooting on film, you're using digital in that aspect of it, right? AI is going to be the same idea. It's already happening in our world, where unions are getting ahead of it. You see the WGA step up and say, "Look, and conveniently timing WGA, the last time they struck was, of course, the digital age, when filmmaking was going to digital and people were worried about the aspect of streaming that was coming that way. That was in 2007. Now here again, they're ahead of it a little bit. It's kind of interesting how their contracts seem to end right when something revolutionary happens, but that's just a coincidence and a nice aspect of that. But they're now going to set the standard for every industry that goes forward talking about AI, because now with every union, that's going to be subject matter. Are we losing jobs because of AI? Are we automating this process? What are we doing here? Things like that are going to be paramount in the labor force for the future of this country and this world. And so that idea is very, very much at the forefront of what can we do, right? We didn't handle, and I'm calling you all out, I'm sorry, but we did not handle the ebook revolution very well. It took a while, not only for to garner the respect that it needed to have, but for us to embrace the respect that it needed to have. Look, we're all looking for that magical wand. We're looking for that pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. We're looking for that magical thing that we don't have to do a lot of work to get towards, right? I don't know if AI is that thing. I don't know enough about it. I just dabbled in it a little bit, but I can tell you that seemingly is where a lot of people are honing their attention to. Now, AI is just one aspect of that. Streamlining the process of how you present yourself is another aspect of it, which was something we talked about last year. And that was one of my predictions at the end of the year, was that we were all going to be ending up streamlining our own processes, that social media was going to fade away into the background of who we are, and that we were going to be more direct selling, that you're going to go to your website, you're going to go through your newsletters, you're going to do the things that have always worked and do it in the forefront. And I think that has come to fruition. I think a lot of people have started to realize that they can direct the traffic and also get the most click and attention toward how they operate with people. A lot of that has also come from, as Nicole will probably tell you, being in person with people and engaging with humans. We can't be afraid of that aspect of things anymore either. I think that has always been paramount in our business. So if you're not getting out there, if you're not putting yourself out there, if you're not sharing and being social, you're going to be left behind. I say this every year, I know, but I do. You're right. I have an agenda because I have a network here that I am putting out there, and I'll acknowledge that I am part of the problem. But look, if you're not being involved, you don't have to be involved with us. I'm happy to have you involved with us. I'd love to have you all more involved with us. Come and join us and put yourself out there here. We would love to do that. It's a safe space to do that. And there's not enough safe spaces. We need to find more safe spaces out there. But that being said, you do need to put yourself out there. If you're not doing that, you're doing yourself a disservice, because why create art if you're not going to share it with the world, right? I know that some of it is personal and some of it you won't share, and I get that. But if you can't sit there and complain about AI, you can't sit there and invoke, oh, it's the system's unfair to me, or I can't get a publishing deal, or I can't do this, or I can't do that, because of the aspect of you're not doing what needs to be done to get you there. And you have to do that. I think that's paramount. I think you just have to put yourself out there. So don't be afraid of it. It's not going to bite you. Well, it might bite you, but hey, look, it only stings for a second, right? And that's how it goes. I'm so grateful and so proud of what we've accomplished here at Go Indie Now, and I'm so grateful to all of you out there. I'm so grateful to all of the people who make Go Indie Now work and been a part of it, who wanted to be a part of it, who have been here and done the things that they've done. It's amazing to me. I am so grateful for that opportunity and being a conduit for that, for somebody to put themselves out there. So I really do appreciate each and every one of you doing all the things that helps us get seen. But at the same token, all I care about is that we have a safe space and that we have a platform for you to be a part of. So, please feel free if you want to do something. If you need some help with something, I'm always available for that opportunity. So I would love to do that for you. And we're going to be celebrating Go Indie Now here in about a month, where I'm bringing all the hosts on, and we're going to talk about what we've experienced and how we've looked at it and how we're going to move forward. So I hope you come and check that out. That'll be on July 16th. We're going to do that show. Madeline will be back next week with another This Week in Indies, and then we're going to take a little bit of a break and then be back July 16th. And then we're going to take an even bigger break because everybody needs some time, just let it marinate and get things done. And a lot of us will take that time and be opportunistic about it. And then we'll be back in the fall with more programming, and we're gonna sledgehammer you with programming. So between between now and September is a good time, if you haven't been checking us out, to go check out what we've been doing and catch up, because we're gonna put out some content during that time period, but it's gonna be a lot less content than we normally put out in the last 4 months. So definitely go do that and check that out. And thank you so much for being here, and thank you for joining us. And remember that it's always time to go indie now. And with that, we say goodbye, and we'll see you next time. Bye, everybody.